Rosamund McDougall.
It's happening so fast and on such a massive scale that you really have to consider it. Poverty, obviously, as you alleviate poverty in the long term, population comes down in the sense that family size comes down, but it is a very long time to turn it around.
Let's be very clear about this. The world's problems are not coming because of the poor in the world. It's coming because of the rich in the world. If you take global warming, if you take land degradation, if you take water stress, let's be very clear. In my own country, it is cities who use, and city dwellers like me, who use 300 litres per capita, who are the problem, so and not a poor person with even their numbers who use 30 litres per capita. We are not talking about the data on this is very clear. The consumption of the rich is the problem. I do recognize population is the problem, but it is not the cause of land degradation.
Well, let me jump in here and share with you. In Somalia, the more educated families are, the less children they have. The more educated a man is, the less wives he has.
Exactly.
So this is about security. People's pensions and survivors when they grow old is dependent on the number of children they have.
So Rosamund McDougall, what do you say to that? Instead of you talk about condoms and birth control, give people books instead, literacy programs, is what these two ladies are saying.
I'd say give them both. Why does it have to be either or?
Well,
or what about that then?
If they're educated, is all I
But I mean, the point that Rosamund McDougall, just somebody, Stan Bernstein, who's a senior policy advisor to the UN Fund for Population Activities, says since population growth, we all admit, increases pressure on the environment and women do a lot of the household resource management, he says, wouldn't advancing gender equality and meeting reproductive health needs make an important contribution to slowing degradation?
Who's disagreeing?
So what were you disagreeing with Rosamund McDougall about?
We were disagreeing at the fact that you're looking at population as a problem, not women's empowerment.
I think it's a matter of justice also, because who says where is the limit of a carrying capacity in a country? It's a matter of lifestyles, and if you look at the ecological footprint measure that compares the biological capacity to regenerate as against the resources being used by a country, most of the northern countries live by a factor of 5 to 10 beyond their limits.
We've heard from, we've heard from Sharif Rahmani, who's the Environment Minister for Algeria, and his basic point is the root cause of all the problems we've been discussing is essentially poverty. That countries with whatever population find that they can't feed them, that the water is not there because they do not manage their resources properly. I mean, is he right? Is that the fundamental problem, poverty?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, poverty and the reasons why people are poor. And we have to, you know, it's not as people choose to be poor and people are so senseless that they're going to force themselves into poverty. You know, our people are so, you know, stupid that they're going to have so many children that are going to make them more poorer. There is a rationale over here which we have to understand because we have to deal with it. If the answer, and even if we were to say population or the numbers of people will add to stress, then the answer will lie in economic security. And that means dealing with poverty.
Fatima Jibrell, I want to put this point to you, which is Wangari Maathai, the Kenyan Nobel Peace Laureate, who's a huge environmental campaigner, says there is a need for greater green awareness, particularly in Africa. She said, you know, people are often saying to her, what's an educated woman like you doing going around planting all these trees? That you need to raise consciousness in Africa about the problems of the environment.
Yes,
I mean, is she right?
She is right, and awareness is the key to all this. Every land has its own knowledge, and you tap it from the human resources in that land. You don't go to universities in the West to learn. Okay. And if we do that, we can succeed. What it means is donors, governments, and educated people of those countries that are educated in the West have to go back and partner with the communities.
Martin Sommer, ultimately, prevention is better than cure, isn't it?
Focus should be placed on local wisdom and experience. Problem is for me, in that context, how can you secure this knowledge because many of the rural institutions have been destroyed in the last decades. There was a fine web of rural institutions working some 20, 30 years ago, and in many countries this has been lost because the values The attractive values in society have been urban values.
Christian Mersmann.
The question that the President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development has put forward to us, how do we mobilize more resources? How do we mobilize more resources to invest into the right things? Because after the Desertification Conference in 1977, billions were invested, particularly in Africa, and there's not much left from that investment. So the question arises here, how can the civil society groups, or the civil society at large, not only be a pressure group to bring forward the issues of desertification, but we all know that civil society groups are much closer to sustainable development than governments normally are, that have priorities that are, so to say, singled out, be it education, be it health, be it infrastructure.
And it's your job, Christian Mersmann, to try to raise, what, $4.5 billion for the next 20 years to address the problems of desertification and drought?
Is that my objective given by you, Xena? I'm trying hard to put the issue forward that where we stand at the moment is really the role of governments is increasing after the so-called Paris Declaration, where the international community, developing countries and developed countries, have agreed that more and more decisions on financial resource allocation is being done at the national level.
I want to ask you, Ibrahim, Dan Stiles, a wildlife consultant based in Kenya, has sent in this question to us. He says, look, desertification has been on the international agenda since the Sahel drought of the 1970s, but it's all been ignored, he says. Is it not the simple answer then that it's seen as a poor world issue and therefore something that the rich countries can safely ignore, despite your best efforts?
Thank you.
I think he's right. And then Europe is surprised that millions of people are fleeing Africa to Europe. The problem is that we have not been investing in land restoration, in ecosystem restoration, and we keep investing in poverty reduction policies that ignore the environment. And yet, more than 80%, or in some countries 90% of the population live in rural areas, and they have nothing else than natural resources to live in.
It has to be said to governments that these are integrated agendas. These are not separate agendas. Water is not separate from land. Land is not separate from forests. And we need to invest into development of poor people. And we need to raise it once again at the global level. We've forgotten when Doha collapses, it impinges on the poorest people of this world.
We have to bring the issues to the faces of donors so they are moved and understand more. A lot is lost in between. And then there are white elephants projects in Africa and poor places. If you understand white elephant, it is a big project that a lot of money went into, and there is only cement and metal and old truck cars there left.
Christian Mersmann, so basically the rich world has to sit up and take notice and do something before the problems of desertification and drought are properly tackled.
You cannot call after an agreement that the international community has reached on how to work together, you cannot call upon the rich world. No, we all know that ODA should increase, that investments should increase, but it's not looking only at one part of the world and not working with the other.
All right, so we've got to leave it there. Clearly, most people here are very committed to meeting the challenges of drought and desertification worldwide, and they feel that there's too much complacency in really tackling the problems. Perhaps the skeptics still need a bit of persuading, but there can be little doubt that humans must learn to better manage the world's resources. Thank you to our panel, and of course thank you to all of you too for watching. From the World Conservation Union, just outside Geneva in Switzerland, it's goodbye from me, Zeinab Badawi.